This is our second interactive session, and here's the plan. We're going to break into these three groups that's been explained. It's academic, international, and adaptation. And we're going to, each of us, take a few minutes to explain what our groups have been up to and what we're expecting from you at your tables. This will be a little bit different than the last session. We'll have a little bit more time for the tables to work together. And rather than you come up with questions, we want you to come up with some of the seminal points that you think ought to be on the agenda for presidential leadership. In other words, how can presidential leadership best promote academic change, transformation, international relationships, and adaptation? And then someone from each group will come up and report on that. I'll repeat that before we continue. Paul Rowland, Jim Buizer, and myself will each give 5 minutes or less descriptions of what we've been up to, what we anticipate, and some of what the committees think makes the most sense. And we'll start this with Paul Rowland.
Morning. Good morning. The Academic Committee, as many of you may know, is relatively new. We have had one meeting. Our co-chairs are John Hager, and Rick Tuggerson. Where's Rick? Is he here now? Well, we have one co-chair here. So John is here. I have to kind of make a footnote here just so that there's not a perceived conflict of interest in me working for John again. I left him about a decade ago. I thought, I won't be working for that man anymore, but here I am back supporting him on this committee, so I look forward to John's leadership with this. We've worked together now for quite some time, and actually I remember about a decade ago, John came with Jeff Chase and Susan Schroeder and I to a conference here in Washington, D.C., and I think it was John's first time that he actually had to do a presentation on sustainability. So we prepped him well, and he's stayed with it. Some things do stick, even working with presidents. A couple of things about the committee. One is that, as I said, we're a new committee, and one unique part of it is that the support for this committee is provided by AASHE. We've been working over the past 5+ years now with faculty and faculty development. Some of you may know about our sustainability across the curriculum leadership workshops. Many of you have had faculty who have attended those that are put on by Jeff Chase and Peggy Bartlett that train faculty to go back to your campuses and do activities that will engage more faculty in infusing sustainability into the curriculum. What we've tried to do today is frame the discussion at the tables around 3 questions, and the questions are in your program and they're on the tables, but I think I'd think of it in terms of the first question being, what's working? The second question is kind of what keeps it from working better, and then third, what can we do to make sure it works better? But fundamentally, what we're interested in knowing at AASHE and what we'd like to get a better handle on is what is it that presidents can do and how can we help you do that? So that's where we'd like to see this discussion go. I will say, and I say this with only a little bit of hesitation, I think probably meeting the academic commitment may be the hardest thing for a president to be able to do. Knowing how much control you have over what faculty do, I think you can appreciate the difficulty that we see in it. And our work with faculty, I hope, is a way to help you see a way through that, and we hope to be able to spend some time talking about that at the tables. Thanks.
This is a little bit, as you can imagine, a little bit of a beauty contest here between the three of us, because we're all going to try and recruit you to our little gig. So I thought I'd do a PowerPoint. But I didn't wear a tie. I see. All right, climate is changing. It already is. As you've heard a number of times, the mitigation side is preventing from the climate changing in the near term worse than it already is, but mostly for our grandkids and beyond because of the life cycle of those greenhouse gases. But we're already seeing climate changing, and this chart here will this map here shows you precipitation in the last 50 years. So from 1960 to 2010, while America has if you count all the raindrops, we have 5% more rain, as you would expect, because there's more moisture in the atmosphere. We have 5% more rain than we did 50 years ago, but it's distributed differently. The Northeast in the past 50 years has about 40 to 45% more rainfall, and the Southwest, where I come from, about the same amount of decline. So the distribution is different. And that's going to get worse as we go forward. This is just what we've seen so far. It's going to get worse as we go forward. And an interesting thing is it's going to happen in extremes, in extreme events. The delivery of rainfall is going to come in the form of floods and extreme weather, and the droughts will be more severe. So lots of different impacts. Water, we just mentioned that, stresses on the water supply, agriculture, crop and livestock stresses, heat waves, we're already seeing a lot of these, heat waves, more frequent and intense, coastline communities, of course, because of sea level rise and storms. I mentioned the heavy downpours or the heavy rainfall, water and energy, competition between water and energy. So you know about the impacts. And these, so one way or the other, we're going to have to adapt. And I'll make just a couple points. Past climate is no longer a useful analog for the future. And if you talk to most communities and most cities and most managers, they're using the past as the analog as they plan for the future. We need to change that. The question is, should we act proactively in anticipation of change and mobilize to reduce effects, or just react as the impacts arrive? Well, you can imagine our answer, right? We aim to build communities that are resilient to the impacts of climate change. And then one last point, adaptation and mitigation are interrelated. So so our working group, our committee, about 10 of us, and there are a number, I think 4 or 5 people here. So if you're on this working group, will you raise your hand so people know who you are, right? Okay, so they're, right. John Anderson is going to pick up the sort of the back end of this one, so he'll come up after our little session. We focused on these 5 questions. I'm not going to repeat them. They're in your book. So because we believe that much like on the mitigation side, much like on the carbon reduction side, universities have a very important leadership role to in the adaptation side. I'll just highlight one thing that I think that we've heard a bit about from the educational side. While we're doing research and maybe we're even looking at our impacts on our facilities, I don't know of strong academic programs in the adaptation side of things, and I think that that's one thing that I'd like to see some focus on. And then besides the facilities and the research, we as universities and colleges, we'd like to see ourselves as the go-to place for any kind of information. In fact, the communities see us as leaders in thought. And in fact, just earlier this week, the head of the the Parks Department for the city of Phoenix came over because they said, we just read this thing in the New York Times where Chicago is changing its planting of the different kinds of trees. We don't know what kind of trees to plant in our parks. What do you say? Well, I said go to the biology department but the answer was, the answer was, we have people who know the answer. And that's why they're coming to us. So these are important leadership roles. And the last thing is that some of us care about the non-human species and what will happen and whether or not they can adapt them. And this next one is a slide of what might happen in the case of deforestation. So we're a little worried that with the deforestation that the poor canines are going to have some problems. So anyway, with this, I'm going to stop because I only had 5 minutes, and I hope. I will keep it up for you. And I'm thinking that you think adaptation is cool enough that we added another table over here. So if you want to switch from where you are, we have an extra adaptation table.
Can I take my tie off? Is that all right?
Can I wear it?
Oh, yeah. All right. I thought that would be a full circle for us. All right. The international group is similar to the others, is going to ask several questions. They are written in your booklet, but I want to repeat them. The first is, how can the ACUPCC be advanced in the international context? Or should it be? Second, what institutions here have international partnerships and programs, and how can they be leveraged to augment the international impact of the ACUPCC? That's a really interesting one, and we've spent a lot of time focusing on that. We talked a lot about it yesterday at the steering committee meeting. That is, how can we maximize all of our international partnerships to focus on sustainability, as well as all the other things that we're doing? And that might be one of the real frontiers for us. And finally, third, what should be the next steps to create a global platform for exchanging ideas related to climate action in higher education? Before we start, I just want to say this again. We've reiterated it throughout the entire conference. It's exactly where this organization needs to be heading. Presidential leadership is absolutely crucial in forwarding the goals of the ACUPCC. We need to do everything we possibly can. We need to find folks on our campuses who can help us with this, and I really hope that you can frame that question as part of everything that you do in the next 45 minutes. How can the presidents help with the academic issues? We have a president, provost, at least one, maybe more teams here, Paul Fontaine and Bill Troop from Green Mountain College. They constantly work together on this sort of thing. So I think as the academic folks meet, what's the role of the president in really making, as presidents, we have much more influence than we think and much less than we'd like. And so I think we need to keep that in mind and as we move forward. The same thing with the adaptation. This adaptation issue is, I will promote these in spite of the beauty contest. The adaptation issue is really the cutting edge of curriculum. Who's doing it? Who's got programs in this kind of thing? I mean, where's that going to come from if it's not presidential leadership? But this is a very important new, why don't we have more freshman seminars, for example, on this very issue that's so important to everybody? Presidents can help make this happen. And finally, in the international area, we're all looking at ways of expanding our student populations. We're all trying to figure out ways that we can connect with other countries for a whole range of reasons. Why not implement sustainability orientations to those partnerships? So that's the challenge for you. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to conclude within 60 seconds. You're going to go to your tables. We've got these cards once again. On those cards, put down what you think are the seminal ideas that you want shared with the entire group in relationship to these questions. We'll come back and we'll discuss those. Any questions? Okay, we're all set.